Hey everyone, welcome back to Crypto Cash. Thank you so much for joining me here. Hope you're having a phenomenal day. Jumping into the charts here, we're going to double check a few important factors here with Bitcoin, specifically the CME gap here getting formed, as well as a significant amount of volume flowing into Bitcoin to punch it through its descending trend there. And then we got about a $500 million that just flowed in there effectively, causing a pretty significant disruption in altcoins and Bitcoin as well, of course, here, just breaking that trend. So awesome stuff. This is what we see. Honestly, we've seen this like 80% of the weekends here over the last 2 or 3 months. So I think it was like 6 out of 8 weekends we've seen Saturday kind of run flat and then Sunday pump. It's kind of a weird thing. It's almost exact opposite of what we saw the first half of the year. So we're going to take a look at that and some back-end data here too, just kind of get some perspective on things, give you a quick understanding of where things are at over the weekend here. So if you want to become a better trader, cryptocash.tech is a site, link down below. Congrats to our community members for some nice profits on our drum roll, please. We got a Crow coin, 49%. Long position there effectively in 2 days. That was a nice little trade. We've got a couple of longs open right now, and I recommended everyone close their shorts earlier with a message to my community, just kind of letting you know, hey, this is something that's probably going to continue on, and with Bitcoin dominance not really going any higher, there's a solid chance that we see altcoins respond consistent. In other words, they're going to be moving with Bitcoin, if you will. That refers to the up and down too. So Bitcoin pulls back, we may see that as well. I'll start with the baseline here with the market overview, kind of get an understanding where we're at here. This hasn't changed too much from yesterday, but just kind of a quick recap. We have more money flowing into Ethereum ETFs versus Bitcoin, which is a good sign here for altcoins, because once again, with ETH being strong, altcoins are stronger. That's essentially the baseline there, but that is good news. Once more, that's a lag. That was roughly 2 to 3 trading days ago. We'll have to wait the weekend out to see where that goes. Fear and greed index is pretty much going sideways here and down. Basically, it was up to what, about 70, almost 70 here just a few days ago, tapering off to 64. This is good because as Bitcoin ranges, the longer we stay in this range, the more likely we are to break up with that bullish rectangle pattern, but also the fear and greed index kind of cooling off. And right now, people are starting to FOMO in thinking, wait a minute, I don't think we're going to see 100,000. I don't think we're going to see 80,000 again for Bitcoin. So I'm going to go ahead and jump on in while we still can. It's kind of that FOMO effect. We're seeing here as well with altcoin season index. While it is down from last week, it's still in pretty good shape. Anywhere between 40 to 50 is a great place. Basically implying we have a lot more altcoins, specifically these coins here, that are performing or outperforming Bitcoin. And that's generally something you want to understand here, because as money flows into altcoins, we see 1.56 trillion now into altcoin, market dominance. That's a very good sign. That's ultimately what we want to look for. So let's go ahead and take a look here, starting with some important Bitcoin factors first. And if you're just kind of rolling your eyes again, I always have to preface here, what Bitcoin calls the shots, okay? So if you don't know what Bitcoin's doing, then you don't know what you're doing, honestly, when it comes to trading altcoins. Yeah, you can get some lucky, fundamental catalysts with, XYZ coin, but for the most part, most coins respond to Bitcoin. So that's why we cover it. I recommend you do the same thing as well. Get good at Bitcoin, and you'll be much better at other coins. That being said, we have a CME gap forming now. Isn't officially opened yet, because CME futures is still closed at this point, but we can see 118.3 is where we closed on Friday, and we're soon to reopen in the $119,000 or higher range. What that'll cause is perhaps a wick down once we see the trading week open to fill that gap. Even though we do still have a CME gap between 114.5 and 115.5, there is still strong consideration for both of those gaps to get filled. So please understand that, especially with them being so close. And there's no guarantee they're going to get filled, but CME gaps have the most consistency in which they do get filled. All that being said, Bitcoin dominance, just to touch on this here, give you some perspective, still pretty good here. We're kind of drawing dead here this week, kind of flattening out, which is actually a good sign, kind of stay in this range. And what that basically means for us is Bitcoin dominance goes sideways, then if the price of Bitcoin goes up, then alts are going to go up. The price of Bitcoin goes down, alts are going to go down. That's kind of where we're at right now for the moment here, with us having somewhat of a range-bound scenario here for altcoin dominance or Bitcoin dominance, depending on how you look at it. Okay, so that's kind of what we're looking at there. And just to touch on Bitcoin, let's go ahead and start first of all with the back and liquidation data, give you some perspective on where we're at here. Once more, we're breaking free from this descending trend. That's generally a favorable sign. That's why you see shorts get squeezed out, because they were trying to short this range at point of control. It didn't work out. All that said, Bitcoin, where are we at here? With open interest, we can see 118.7 to 118. well, basically 119. So that 118 to 119 range is that solid amount of volume. We have a lot of volume accumulated there the most. In fact, you can kind of see it here. 117.9, basically round number 118,000 is that key level foundation, that point of control. And we saw this nice little bullish type of rectangle pattern there forming. Now again, it's a weekend. I don't generally trade weekends, but you can see that that's a positive contributing factor. The price didn't pump because it's a bullish rectangle. It just kind of gives you a representation that the price is ranging, derived from the upside, downside. It's going to continue higher. That's kind of where we're at. We're also in a macro bull flag too. We'll talk about that, or sorry, bullish rectangle for Bitcoin, more likely to break up than down. And we take a look at liquidation short delta, it is dissipating. It's at 4 billion now versus 12 billion just 24 hours ago. So this is a good sign, implying that shorts are starting to get squeezed out or close their positions and generally are on their way down. In fact, if we zoom in here, I can see just a little speck of green. It basically implies we're at break even. Break even implies a shift in momentum. Okay. Same thing here as well. We can see 120,000 to 123. That's the next area of liquidation that's going to get hit pretty hard here soon. So I do want to say that even though I don't love and relish the thought of taking a long on a weekend, specifically on a Sunday with this kind of volume, this does kind of imply and indicate that we're more likely to see that level than the downside. So you're probably going to find more success taking a long versus a short with Bitcoin. Now we'll identify altcoins too if they're going to be necessarily good calls for taking longs or shorts today. But at this point, that's kind of where we're at there. We can see net longs are averaged the most at 118.7. Those are some previous longs that were underwater. Now they're back in the green. We got these late shorts here at 117,300. And they are going to have a bad day here very soon. Already probably having one. Either way, the open interest, basically, sorry, correction, the long versus short delta is basically right here at about 118.7. That's been averaged the most, so we see the most amount of average positions in that area. So again, delta is kind of just indicative of where people are hedged the most. All that being said, we can see in the last 4 hours, we've broken our descending trend. We're now retesting our previous ascending trend, potentially bearishly, but at this point, this seems like a pretty obvious and these are easier to see after the fact, of course, but I mentioned this a couple of days ago with us having a manipulative wave down here to fill that CME gap. Even though the CME gap wasn't technically filled on the futures, it was essentially, that area was retested, and we saw this lower leg down. If you're not familiar with this, we do have an education section in our Discord that touches on a lot of different movements, if you will, and this is a standard power of three where we got this accumulation phase, we had our manipulative phase, and now we're in our expansion phase. Right? So we're starting to see this here. This is very common. The reason why this occurs is because a lot of shorts get squeezed out and or get trapped, and they're underwater right here, and the price just keeps going up and up and up. They're forced to close their positions. More people are trying to buy. It pushes the section a lot higher, a lot faster. So that's pretty clear what we're seeing here. Now, was it expected to see this on a weekend? Not really. But the truth is, lately, we can almost bank on weekends being very strong and volatile, specifically on Sundays, which is a very unique thing because it used to be Saturdays, now it's Sundays, and it's kind of weird, but that's where we're at there for Bitcoin. Let's go ahead and move on. Let's quickly double check Ethereum CME futures here, and we can see the previous CME gap has been filled, so we can go ahead and remove that. And if we want to look here as well, we close at 37.25. So we do have a new CME gap here getting formed essentially for Ethereum. Okay, so we're going to pay attention to that, of course, and I'll go ahead and update that. I'll post that on our playout chart in our Twitter, Telegram, and Discord. If you're not familiar, it does look a little something like this here, where we just provide any and all relevant information here for you. Let's go ahead and talk about let's go ahead and discuss Ethereum here first. So now that we got a CME gap forming that is roughly at 37.25, hypothetically, the price pulls back to that range. You could very well see a leg up from there. But at this point, I don't really see it coming back down anytime soon. It's moving consistent with Bitcoin, almost 2x of Bitcoin. Broke free from its descending trend here. Definitely looking very strong. So let's take a look at the back end and see where we're at here for ETH and just kind of give us perspective on what's going on here. So if I recall correctly, there's a massive accumulation between 3,900 and 4,000 of liquidation. We can see that right there, pretty clear. A lot of liquidation between 3,850, 3,900, and roughly 4,000. So it's kind of spread out, but no matter how you look at it, we're at 6 billion in liquidation long delta. That's a significant amount. And if we take a look at open interest too, we can recognize that there's a lot of support below the price. building that solid base at 3750, 3780, and 3800. So those are all good solid support ranges for us here for ETH. So all in all, there's not much to really note outside of the current chart's looking fantastically bullish. We're at a 5 right now on TD sequential. We'll probably see another 20 hours of continuation. So by this time tomorrow, we might see some cooling pressure, or some cooling off rather, selling pressure. But at this point, I think it's pretty likely we're going to hit this upper liquidation range. Once more, I'll go ahead and post a new chart on our social media there soon for you. Let's move on to Solana and just quickly double check futures here as well for Solana, just to kind of see where we're at and where we closed on Friday. We closed around 187 on Friday, and currently we're seeing Solana at 189. So it's not that big of a difference. If we do form a CME gap, a retest of 190, 187, that makes sense. Let's go ahead and quickly look at the back end here, see where we're at here for Solana. When we look at the open interest range, we can see 187 and 183 are those two heavy concentrations. It's kind of like the local range that we're stuck within. We break free from that, 190 becomes a new bottom, we see 200 plus. However, you got to recognize this is one of the few coins that has the largest amount of short liquidation delta being so high. Let me refresh this here. We can still see it's still quite high. This isn't dramatically large because it's only 80,000. It's not like it's in the billions, but the key takeaway here, there's still more people shorting Solana than taking longs right now. So you're technically going against the grain if you're trying to take a long into this. 195 seems like a practical next area of liquidation though, because there's a pretty big chunk there, the local high there, where people are hedged the most. A lot of shorts might have a bad day here soon. So that is where we're at in the back end for Solana. The front end looks pretty good, honestly. We're still working above our ascending trend here, and we're continuing higher. So this is pretty important here, higher highs and higher lows. We retested our support range here, so congrats to those who got in the mid 170s. That is awesome, caught that candle wick up. And at this point, there's no reason to try to bet against this. There's no hidden bearish divergence people like to attach themselves to. There's no Elliott wave theory that's going to tell you we're going to go to 5,000 or 400 because that's just kind of what they do. They tell you best case scenarios in every single setting. And overall, honestly, a retest of 206 makes perfect sense at this point. Once more, it does require Bitcoin to stay in its range and go higher. We see 120 plus for Bitcoin, then it's almost guaranteed that most altcoins are going to retest their local highs. We got a recent point of control here once more at 195, 193. This coin does have some resistance above us, but it's looking pretty solid with a good solid foundation of volume and, more importantly, a lot of liquidation to the upside here. So even though statistically trading against this much volume to the downside is not a good call, I think Solana does have a pretty decent chance of hitting that 200 plus range again. All right, let's take a look here at SUI, see what's going on. This is a monster right here, broke free from his bullish flag pattern, and it's definitely looking pretty solid here. So let's take a quick look at the back end, kind of see what's up with open interest. We can see a heavy accumulation at about 430. That's somewhat of a resistance potential, but more important, solid base between 410 and 395 as identified earlier. I've been talking about that for a while being a desirable entry consideration. At this point, we may not see it for a while, if at all, but it is still something nonetheless, nice solid base of volume there. And we take a look at liquidation. Let's see, we got liquidation doing pretty well here overall. Liquidation long delta is quite high. We got more bulls than bears in the market here for SUI. And then of course, 480 is that upper range, that liquidation. So I think a better case scenario would be for us to hit that 480 range and pull back. I think it's an aggressive profit target personally, but once more, it is upwards here of that 1.272 fib level. So there's some consistency there with volume based on liquidation and that fib level there. So I think 480, 485 is probably the better case scenario on this continuation pattern. Moving on to XRP, last but not least, of course, as per usual, we're gonna go ahead and round out the analysis here with just kind of understanding the open interest ranges for XRP. There's a big base of volume at 310 roughly and 320 here locally. Liquidation short delta is still high, that's at 2.5 billion. So that's actually monumentally large compared to most other coins. At its best, XRP was at about 4 billion to the upside when it was running. So the truth is, from a liquidation volume standpoint, that is a tremendous amount of shorts in the market. While that implies there's probably going to be a strong short squeeze, it also reinforces resistance here in the 325 to 330 range, okay? So you're kind of flipping a coin if you're trying to take it long into that resistance, but I would say it's probably pretty similar to Solana outside of just more selling pressure, whereas we just have that significant amount of volume above the price. or that point of control resistance range. So me personally, if we do end up getting lucky at about the 345 range to 340, that would be a good consideration for a short. A lot of it depends on liquidation delta and where we're at that time. But between now and then, that's a pretty obvious resistance wall for us. So I would recommend considering range-bound trading somewhere in this range of $3 to $3.40. That's probably what we're going to be stuck within until the price either flags out, or perhaps we could even see a descending broadening wedge that could break out. There's a lot of little scenarios here, but nobody truly knows. That's the truth about it. And at this point, based on the back-end data, it's not statistically viable to want to take a long position right now. However, just note, if we do break this local range here, there is a decent chance we run towards 343 again, right? And we are retesting that level here at about 322. So I think continuation higher is definitely a distinct probability pending Bitcoin doesn't pull back, right? Bitcoin stays here, goes higher, then I think most alts, including XRP, are going to continue, because once more, Bitcoin dominance is running sideways. And as it does that, most altcoins are going to be like, okay, Bitcoin's going, let's go with it. That's what we're seeing right now. So until that narrative changes, that's the dynamic that we got to work within. So, all right, I hope that makes sense and I clarified that correctly. Thank you again for being an amazing, phenomenal, awesome part of my life. Make sure you join us over at BitUnix. This campaign just finished. We had some pretty awesome volume ranking rewards, $16,000 spread amongst, I think, the top 10 traders. That's pretty awesome. And then, if you want to use no KYC or VPN exchange, I highly recommend them. They're very good. We have competitions and bonuses every single month, so be sure to check them out. And then obviously join us over on Twitter, Telegram, and Discord. I also have a TikTok now as well, and this is a lot of fun. So hope you all have a good one. Thanks so much again for your time. We'll see you soon. Take care.